I realize the title is a little misleading. I don't mean they went to the infernal home of Hades, the greatly feared god of death in Greek mythology. I wouldn't make light of something like that. Not to mention, if they had visited the land of no return, they wouldn't have been able to return and give me the shirt, right? We've all read those classic myths and epic tales. There's always some catch or critical error the protagonist makes whenever they dare to enter the one-way realm of the dead. That's not the case here. This was something else. They actually went on a little remote island getaway. The tropical resort in Tobago is called the Underworld because their tourism bureau is in the business of selling cleverly themed vacation travel packages and filling their hotel rooms. Referring to it as Caribbean Mosquito Haven would dissuade travelers from visiting their tiny island. As they say, accent the positive, eliminate the negative, don't mess with Mr. in between. Elise and Tony are two of my best friends in the world. Rob and Becca are also very good buddies. I was invited to go with them on the trip, but as a single guy, I didn't want to be the odd man out, if you know what I mean. It would have felt weird staring into my drink glass while they paired up to suck face and grope each other. Knowing what I know now, everything turned out for the best. Tropical curses can be hard to get rid of. I asked Tony to text me when they arrived safely, but internet coverage on the island is spotty, so I wasn't surprised I didn't hear from him for a few days. When I did, it wasn't at all what I expected. I assumed I'd receive panoramic shots of the beach at sunset or some good-natured ribbing about me being stuck back home in the blustery cold weather. Instead, what I actually got was troubling, to put it mildly. As his revelatory messages unfolded, he confessed that they felt increasingly unsafe by a series of uncomfortable events which transpired completely out of their control. His tone strongly implied they were in grave danger. It seemed like an off-putting joke at first. I thought they felt bad for me being home alone and were trying to minimize their vacation fun, but this went way past downplaying their enjoyment. It was eerie and morbid. Tony said they were being followed at night by shadowy figures mirroring their movements. He actually used the word stalked in a follow-up response. News stories of travelers being victimized or killed in tourist traps are increasingly common these days. Because of that, I urged him to contact the authorities immediately. He didn't respond right away, but I completely understood. He genuinely sounded afraid for their safety. It's not like they had time to reassure me they were all right in the middle of their ongoing situation. Tony is 6'5" and built like a professional football player. Rob is no slouch either. He's a bodybuilder. The two of them together are very intimidating to approach, but thieves are brazen, desperate, and if they have weapons, it doesn't matter how buff you are. I was highly worried but hoped the island police would put an end to the potential crisis. Hours passed. Nothing. I decided to reach out to Elise, Rob, and Becca separately. They were equally unresponsive. I looked up the Tobago Police Department phone number and was about to call them when another text came in. This time from Rob. I don't mind telling you, his message concerned me even more than I had been with Tony. He appeared to be completely rattled by whatever they were going through. Dude. The creepy things watching our bungalow from the jungle are definitely not human. I know how that sounds, but they can slither up the trees like a freaking snake. We've called the cops a dozen times, but they've been a no-show so far. They advised us to stay inside under all circumstances and keep quiet. The last couple times they refused to even answer our call. It's madness. Becca and Elisa are inconsolable. They were the first to see them leering at us through the window. Tony grabbed a mop from the closet to try to scare them off, but I reminded him of what the cops said. Maybe the big lug will keep his ass in the house. You know him. He thinks he's Superman or something. Rob was definitely the more level-headed of the pair. It seemed like he was keeping his wits about him, but the way he described the stalkers in the jungle as being serpent-like made my skin crawl. I worried the locals might have slipped something into their drinks to rob them. When I tried to call their phones, it wouldn't go through. A recording informed me the intended recipients were not equipped to send or receive international calls. Cell coverage was apparently limited to person on the island. Fortunately, texts would go through using the resort Wi-Fi service. If Tony resorted to brandishing a mop handle as a threat deterrent, then they had no significant weapons. I was engrossed in their ongoing drama from a couple thousand miles away, but unable to offer any real help. They were essentially on their own. All I could do was text moral support and calming words from afar. Alvin, we're fully surrounded in this glorified native hut, right beside the swamp, Becca revealed. Rob and Tony are keeping a lookout from the windows. We have the lights out so they can't see inside. The reptilian creatures have yellowish eyes and slitted pupils. It's like seeing an unholy demon from Dante's Inferno on the other side of the glass. There's not a trace of humanity in them. No emotion on their monstrous, leathery faces. They slither and flex their sinewy bodies in the nearby tree branches to intimidate us. Despite the danger lurking in this godforsaken hellhole, Tony keeps threatening to go out there and kick their asses. What a moron. He just doesn't get it. Elise can't talk any sense into him either, and the damn island cops here are useless. I messaged her back immediately but struggled to find anything helpful to say. I didn't have any real-world experience dealing with a jungle full of snake men intimidating tourists at the underworld. The situation was so surreal I wondered if they were under the influence of some potent hallucinogenic drug and actually seeing spider monkeys in the woods. That would have made more sense than an army of serpent ghouls dangling from tree limbs in Tobago. Despite the bizarre optics, the four of them clearly believed what they were telling me. I was convinced of that. Did you jam kitchen chairs under the doorknobs like they always do in the movies? I suggested to Rob. The dining room should have some knives in the drawer. His quick answer implied they had fortified the bungalow as much as possible with the items they had at their disposal. No sooner than I'd sent my pointless tips to him, a message came in from Elise. She is one of those phonetic texters who uses acronyms and abbreviations. Under the duress of also being surrounded by yellow-eyed snake folk, you could imagine the syntax police having a field day. Alvin, we are under attack. They are getting closer. T and Rose said they are outside house now. OMG. I'm so terrified I'm never coming back if we make it out. She also included a half-dozen frightened emojis and cartoon poop. Presumably, it was scared out of her. I felt beyond helpless. My best friends in the world were enduring some hideous, supernatural fever dream and I couldn't do a thing about it. An hour passed while I gnawed my bloody fingernails to the quick. Several follow-up messages went unanswered. I didn't know what to think. Had the menacing entities in the Tobago jungle breached their cottage? Had my terrified pals been carried off to the actual underworld by zombified corpses liberated from their graves? The human imagination is a powerful thing, and with no input or feedback to keep it securely on the rails, things can drift far, far afield. My thoughts went to terrible places. After an eternity of silence passed, Tony finally messaged me back. Whatever those dark, slithery things are, they are closing in on us. They've crept even closer now. They're no longer attempting to hide in the jungle fog any longer. I can see them clearly in the moonlight. Let me tell you now, they aren't any no species of living creature. Only dark voodoo could summon something evil like them from the depths of hell. They've started scratching and clawing on the door and walls to torment us. I don't know how long I can hold them off. Alvin, it's been real, bro. Tell my family the message ended abruptly as if he sent it in an urgent hurry. I never got a response from him after that. Texts sent to the others were equally met with silence. My message stated they were delivered but not read. I knew what that meant. My stomach sank. In frustration, I frantically called each of them in hopes it might go through, but I got the same automated error message from before. It was utterly hopeless. Despite it being 2:30 a.m., I called Rob's mom. I didn't know what I was going to say, but she needed to know they were in mortal danger. She could reach out to the international authorities to do an inquiry into their safety. I need not have worried about waking her up, though. She answered immediately. She'd been getting play-by-play details about the horrifying saga from Rob the whole time. We compared notes. She too had been advised about the alarming Caribbean voodoo snake cult lurking in the underworld woods. I've already been in contact with the other parents, she confessed while sobbing. We're going to fly down there first thing tomorrow morning and demand they do a wellness check. We'll get to the bottom of this horrific madness, she assured me. There was a lingering tremor in her voice which spoke of how frightened she was. I felt a sense of relief that they were going there to investigate. Obviously, I was still on edge, but there was only so much I could do as a non-relative. I sent at least a dozen more texts, but all of them were left unread. Had the serpent zombies breached the door? I had no idea what to believe about the current status of my friends, but things appeared pretty grim. I was on pins and needles for the next couple days as repeated follow-up messages went unanswered. A firm knock on the front door early the next morning startled me. I staggered out of bed and pulled it open. There stood Tony, Elise, Becca, Rob, and his mom, all grinning from ear to ear. Tony held up a colorful t-shirt with the words "Visit Tobago" emblazoned on it. He handed it to me while my early morning audience roared in unison at my perplexed expression. As it turns out, their collective text saga was an intricately orchestrated ruse. They did it to give me a vicarious adventure because I'd decided to skip the trip. They really got me. I'd been the inadvertent catalyst for the elaborate prank because I made an offhand joke about them needing to avoiding voodoo dolls and zombies. Touché. Rob's mom was in on it too. They figured I'd call her since she was the only parent whose number I knew. It was masterful in its planning and execution. Revisiting the beginning narrative of this story, my best friends went to the underworld and all I got was this anticlimactic t-shirt.